Hello everybody, I'm so excited to bring you another video today. We're still on our series Content Creation, or how to create content for your social media. So here today, I have a very special guest whom I'm very excited to present to you later because we're going to be talking about how to communicate in social media. So watch out for this and stay tuned until the end. So here he is, my very special guest, Mr. Armas.
Hi.
So were you able to choose a pair of shoes for the show today?
Of course, I was able to choose pairs of shoes.
He couldn't decide, that's why it took a while before we were able to film this today. So first and foremost, to those of you who don't know him yet, Mr. Armas is firstly my husband. And of course, he's the father of my 5 children. But aside from that, he's also a pastor, a teacher, and a communicator. And because our topic today is really in communication and how important it is in content creation, I brought him here today with us. But before that, I'd like to ask Sir Mond, how long have you been preaching, teaching, communicating?
All right, well, to answer that, Miss Leigh, I've been preaching since around 2005, 2006, and it's part of what I do up to today. So before I used to start preaching or teaching in one-on-one setups like counselings or maybe sit-downs, Bible studies, and the other things that I do. But today, I still do the same things now you could say in a bigger capacity, where I am called to preach at a certain time to our congregation, to our community of like around 4,000 to 5,000 people in our church. And I also help serve and teach in our Bible school.
Right. And of course, you do a lot of communicating, being a pastor, a teacher in the Bible school. And the dynamics before, even the lockdown, is that you're communicating to a live audience. Now, your opportunity to communicate is via social media, where you face the screen using social media apps. How do you think is communication important in delivering what it is that you have to say to the people using social media?
Well, communication, especially in social media, goes beyond just simply looking at a camera and talking and speaking. We have to understand that communication is not communication until your message is received. So therefore, I believe that communication is so important in social media because, especially at such a time as this, people have such a short attention span. And we have to be able to be skilled communicators to grab the audience through the lens of a camera, especially those who are on their phones who just swipe easily up, down, left, right. And we have to be able to engage them the best way that we can. Why? Because in social media, that's where the people are at. Especially for the context of where we are at today.
Right.
We are on lockdown, we are on quarantine, and they may not be in public places, but social media is already deemed a public place. That's where they are.
Right.
So I believe it's so important for the very fact that that's where people are and that's where they can be engaged. So we cannot belittle social media. We cannot belittle being online. All the more communication is important because with all the information, all the content that is being sent out there, that is being posted every single second, every single minute, then our communication has to be all the more intentional, substantial, and fulfilling, for those who are hearing it.
Oh, that's very good.
I learned that from you.
I like what you said, that you don't only communicate to the camera, you don't just try to talk to the camera, but you need to grab the attention of the people watching through the other side of the lens. And did you know that the attention span of people have decreased from 15 seconds 5 years ago into only 2 to 3 seconds today?
I'm sorry, what?
See what's happening? He's losing his attention already. You can't lose your attention.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So it's very important that we communicate effectively. I want to ask, because you look so confident. You look so, it's like almost You know what to say, even if it's spontaneous. Um, did you have any inhibition prior to starting your own channel or to speak through social media?
Well, before, yeah, definitely. I mean, even today, there are still some thoughts that you have to contend with. You know, every single day is a choice to move forward in what it is that you want to do, and that goes beyond just simply social media. But in every choice, every day is a decision to contend and to move forward. Yeah, I mean, we all have inhibitions. You know, statistics say that one of the greatest fears of men is to stand before an audience and speak.
Right.
Whether it's through a camera or whether it's in a live audience. So yeah, I had my fair share of having to deal with thoughts in my head. But at the end of the day, you know, you just have to simply embrace what it is you believe that is a passion in your heart and what it is you believe you've been purposed to do on social media. So, you know, it's for me that's my anchor.
Right.
You know, when you always think of what people say, you know, the good word says that the fear of men is a snare. So therefore, you know, I can't rely on what other people say about me, except, you know, if they're well-meaning. You know, there are certain people I trust who I allow to coach me, to guide me. But, you know, the rest of men's opinions, you know, I can put that on a shelf and just simply move forward with what it is that I'm very strong about, what it is I'm very passionate about.
So I wanna echo in or maybe pick a little bit more on what you said when you said that you had to deal with thoughts before you fully embrace that you need to get out there and share the message that you have to people. What kind of thoughts were going into your brains, to your mind?
Well, the thought of what if nobody really follows? What if nobody really watches or listens? The thought of being misunderstood. The thought of, you know, my intentions being read wrongly. There's a lot of thoughts, and you know, I wasn't a confident teenager growing up. I've always thought of myself as somebody who wished that he could always avert confrontations. I don't like being in confrontations. So as much as possible growing up, I wanted to be a man pleaser. Before I started going online and seeing my own, even seeing my own videos online would get me to cringe sometimes. Listening to myself, I'd have to like close my eyes and think it's somebody else. But you just have to settle in your heart once and for all that you're doing something you love. And for me, one of my core purpose is being able to add value to people, being able to lift people up from where they are. If I could inspire them with just a word, with just a sentence, with a one-liner bomb, you know, that they could remember for the rest of their lives, and if because of that lives could get changed, then you know what? For me, it was worth it. And that's what I try to remember. I try to remember this is who I am, this is what I have to offer, and this is what I'm really passionate about. It's so strong in my heart. So at the end of the day, you know what? If people think of me wrongly, then you know what? I can't please everybody. I'm out there to be a blessing to people. I want to be able to help people in any way that I can. And social media is made available to us. I just want to be able to take advantage of that.
Right. You know, for some of you who have not yet realized that, because I worked, you know, for a long time in the area of advertising, before you get in front of a camera for broadcast, you'd have to pay millions of pesos. If you want to be heard for 30 seconds, you'd have to pay about 300,000 to get, you know, online, to be broadcasted. And imagine, you know, companies who get in there, have their own shows, they would pay millions of pesos just to be heard. But today we have this power of social media. There's Facebook, there's YouTube, there's Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Sama na natin yung TikTok dyan, where all you have to do is to be able to generate and connect with your network, put your camera in front of you, and begin to broadcast what it is that you have to say. So to me, as a businesswoman as well, if you try to translate that, that in itself is so valuable that people like you and I, if you believe that you have a message to share, should not put on the shelf. Now is not the time to say, I won't utilize that for fear of judgment, especially of people who don't know you.
That's right.
right? I mean, they have a lot of things to say, but let me just say it out there, just so you know, people have a different perspective as well of how powerful social media can be and how it's so free to us today. What is the difference between communicating to a live audience and now that you're communicating through social media?
A lot. For me, I can only answer for the context that I'm in. When I preach and stand before an audience, I can actually feel a pull. When I say a pull, I can see the people who are actually engaged with me. And it's a technique that a lot of public speakers use, that you identify 4, 5, 6 friendly or familiar faces in the audience who you know have their eyes locked on you. Therefore, you feel like you can draw from them, draw a little bit of a push. I guess that's one of the major differences in having to communicate online, because online the only thing that's in front of you is your camera.
Right.
It's your device. So you have to purposefully and willfully really give out regardless of where you are at in your message, in your teaching. You have to be able to maintain a level of consistency regardless of how you think people will react. In a live setting, it's easy to assess that. It's easy to assess if you're connecting with the audience, if you're making headway into your message, if they're getting it. But online, through the lens, through the camera, you just have to simply give it your best regardless. So I guess it's really good training also. It's really good sharpening for somebody who wants to be a communicator, a public speaker, whatever else you may want to be. It helps you level up your game. So it's a big difference, and I believe that there are both pros and cons to it.
Okay. I noticed in particular, especially with Mon, is that he is a storyteller. And I want you to be able to see what his process is when he develops his message or content for social media. Care to share how you do it?
Well, to begin with, I gotta know what my key message is. I mean, that's without a key thought and without a key message, it's like you really don't know where you're headed. It's like going on a road trip not just without a map, but without a destination. Mm-hmm. So for me, if you want to communicate on social media, if you want to communicate online, I want to ask you right now, what is something you're very strong about? What is a key message that you want your audience to hear and to take home with them?
Right.
So that's where I begin. I always have to have a truth that I know I'm really passionate about and I really believe in, that is worth conveying to whoever's gonna listen. And from there, that's where I develop all of the other parts of my message. That key truth or that key principle dictates how I'm gonna get there. It's like going again on a road trip. You're going to some place, let's say 60 miles away. Do you want to go there the fastest route? Let's take the highway. Do you want to go there the scenic route? Let's take the mountainside. Regardless, you get there. So for me, that's the most important thing to consider. Whenever I develop a message, whenever I have a story to tell, what is it that I want people, to know at the end of my session?
So the key message,
The
that's
key
also
message.
very important for us, being in the communication industry. Key message is almost like if you're preparing for content for, let's say, YouTube today or Facebook today, and you want to create a video or a blog or a podcast material, you have to be able to tweet, or put it in a 140 character scale, what it is that you really want to say for that particular moment. Now, in your process, you think about the key message. What elements do you still put into that to make your key message entertaining or interesting or engaging to your audience? Like, do you think about analogies on purpose? Do you think about real life stories on purpose? What do you put in there?
Well, for me, I'm big on stories. I'm very big on visualizing. Let's say if it's a story from the Bible, because I'm a preacher, I try to put myself there, and I try to get the personality, or I try to get the human side of it. You know, like, I want to be able to involve myself in the story to a point that if I can relate to it, then I can make my audience relate to it as well.
Okay.
So
I think that's a very important word, relate. That means the message that we're trying to prepare is something that's relevant to your audiences.
that's right.
Okay.
That's right. So I try to involve as much to begin with, you know, because connecting to the audience is very important. I can't communicate if I'm not connected to them. So I try to connect first, you know, always by using real life experiences or an interesting story, or, you know, something about my kids, you know, because that seems to always amuse people. And by then, you know, once people are connected, then I'm sure when their hearts are open, when their ears are ready to hear, then I can bring in now, you know, the truth of the matter, which is also connected to the story that I just shared anyway. So yeah, for me, I'm big on stories. I'm big on making the deep truth so simple, because you can see it in real life experiences.
Okay, so you mentioned your key message, and then in your storytelling tactic, you also use real life stories as part of your introduction to make it more relevant to your audience. That's what you remember. Now, in your process again of story development, do you create an outline for this, or do you write a story that you will follow so it's easier for you to remember when you're about to speak?
Well, I definitely have an outline.
Okay.
You know, it's good to organize your thoughts. I'm striving to a point, I want to get better to a point that when I sit down and I study, it gets so much into me that when I stand up in front of people or in front of a camera, I don't need my notes. I'm not there yet. I'd like to think that someday I will be, but I'm not there yet. But that's what I'm striving towards. So in the moment, and for all of you guys, you know, who are out there and you're saying you want to be a public speaker, you want to be able to motivate people, inspire people online, whether it's in front of a camera or in front of a live audience, I want to encourage you, you know, the outline is such a helpful tool. You know, you got to get your thoughts down. The more organized your thoughts are, the more that you can be free to be able to do your ad-libs. Why? Because you've already organized your thoughts, the flow that you want to do in your message, that if you go a different vein, let's say in section B of your message, and you go a different vein because you feel like this just spontaneously fits in so well, you can easily go back to where you left, because you already have an outline, not just in your laptop, not just on your phone, but even in your head. So spontaneity, the effectivity of spontaneity is derived from the excellence of your preparation.
Wow, I love that.
So for me, the outline, it's one of the most important tools that I hold dear even as a communicator. I get my phone out anytime that you have a thought with regards to a message you want to share or something you want to share online. I get my phone out and I just type, regardless of where it will fit. As long as it's a thought that I really love, I just put it down anyway. Why? Because in the future, I'll have use for that. So that's something that I could encourage you practice. You know, whatever thoughts come out, just jot it down. You'll find that in the future, in one of your outlines, that will fit in there.
Right, okay. And importantly now, because we're seeing like a form in the way that you create your story before you even share it online, how important is closing for you? Or what are your key thoughts when you develop a closing remark or a closing part in the overall story?
How important? For me, it's one of the most important parts as well.
Okay.
Well, I believe that all the parts of the messages are important, but the closing is so important for me because a lot of people, and I'm just being real, as a public speaker, as somebody who has spoken in front of people for over 10 years, going 15 years now.
Wow, tagal na pala. How old ka na ba?
I I started preaching when I was 5. I'm 20 right now. No, just kidding. All right. The closing is so important because people who listen to you may not necessarily remember every single detail of the truths or the principles that you're giving out. But what will be easier for them to remember is how they felt in the moment when you were speaking to them.
Wow, I like that.
So when they remember that emotion, like how it was that they felt when they felt like they had no more hope, and then you share the story about your own experience and how you were lifted up, and that propelled them to get back and stand up and get their breakthroughs. 10 years from now, they may not necessarily remember immediately the principle, but they will remember how they felt, and how they felt transports them back to that principle.
Wow, I think that's very powerful because now what you're sharing with us is not just about developing content for your social media and thinking about a story in order to create a form for that content, but what we're also doing when you utilize and we leverage on social media to share your message is you're actually creating an experience for your audience.
That's right.
I think that's very, very important. I think it's a next level kind of thinking that when you begin to jump into really the communication, industry, if I can term it that way, that you don't only think about the words that are coming out of your mouth, the hook and the bait that will keep people there, but the overall experience that they will get. What advice can you give to those people who are saying right now that they're not confident to communicate because they're not really good in communicating? What are the practical steps that they can do so that they can be better in communicating?
Well, I guess one of the first most important things that you can do as a communicator is find something worth communicating. I mean, the messenger is only as good as the message. And
Good.
if you don't have a message that you carry strongly in your heart, then you won't find the passion and the determination to be able to make yourself better. And that's why it's so important in communicating that there is a message you strongly believe in. So for me, I want to be able to share, and hopefully this would help somebody out there. I wasn't always a communicator. I was a stutterer growing up. I would stutter my words. I would tend to forget the next words in my sentences. In fact, sometimes it still comes out every now and then. But things changed when I realized that I was given a God-given call to be able to share and to communicate and to preach the gospel as I know it to be. And that's where everything had to go out the window. My inhibitions, my limitations, my hesitations, a lot of those things, that had to go out the window because I had to latch on to this message that changed my life. It was something that I was so passionate about, talking about the love of God, that I said, if this is what I experienced with the love of God, I gotta do everything in my capabilities, even beyond my abilities, to make others experience it as well. So whatever limitations you have, you know what? Your abilities, they can be improved. Like what I said, I used to be a stutterer before. And all of those things. I want to encourage you right now, some of the practical things that you can do in addition to finding a message that you want, that you're passionate about to communicate to others. Then, some of the other things you can practically do is get your vocabulary on the next level. Read a lot. The more that you read sentences, the more that those sentences become second nature to your lips.
Right.
The more that you get a lot of these words in you, you won't have such a hard time trying to express yourself because you've been reading and these words have gotten already into your system. Another thing that I can practically advise, I guess, in being better, in communicating, is you just have to be real with who you are. For me, that's one of the most effective ways of communicating. The last thing you want to be is to be somebody who impresses people.
Right.
You're not there to impress anybody. You're there, remember, to impart a key message.
Right.
So when you understand that regardless of how people would react, to your message, you know that what you're carrying is so worth it, then you go beyond that level of trying to impress and trying to be drawn by the millions of opinions out there. You gotta stand firm in what you believe is true. And I believe that you being true to yourself, you know what, if you're funny, be funny. If you're passionate and straight to the point, then do so. Don't get me wrong, we all strive to be better.
Right.
But in striving to be better, you gotta make sure that you don't lose who you truly are. Because one of the most important things in remembering in communication that makes you effective is that when you are true, it's easier for people to latch on to you.
Wow, that's powerful. To summarize what he said in helping you guys improve, it's very simple. Okay? Well, it sounds so simple, but the steps are pretty easy as shared by Pastor Mon. And that is own your message, know by heart what it is that you really want to share, and take your vocabulary to the next level. Read a lot and read some more. And thirdly, be who you are. So those are just some of the things that you've shared. And I guess the last thing that I want to ask you also is that in your journey of communicating, how important was correction for you? And how did it help you?
How important was correction for me?
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most important, I'd say it was an 11. I still remember those days when, as a starting preacher, as a new preacher in our church, I would remember my leaders, especially my senior pastor after I preach. She would call me into her office and we would sit down and listen to my tapes. Tapes pa nun, guys. Tapes. No DVDs yet, no CDs yet. They were still tapes. And she would play those tapes for me to listen. And almost every sentence, she would say, "What did you mean by that?" And I would say, "Well, ma'am, this is what I intended to say. This was the message behind those words." Well, then she would say, "Well, then say it like that." We spent hours listening to a 40-minute message of mine. I remember we would sit down for like 4 hours in her office.
Wow.
And she would go line upon line upon line over my message. But those sessions, those times that we would spend in her office still ring true to me today. Every time I get up, I could hear her voice in the back of my head telling me, "Mon, say it like that. Mon, you need to clarify that. Mon, you gotta avoid blanket statements." So, I truly believe I would not be the kind of communicator I am today if not for correction. Why? Because I didn't know what I was doing. But there was somebody who knew what I had to do. And through correction, I'd like to think I've made myself better. Through correction, through receiving correction from people I trust, I'd like to think I'm better at it. I'd like to think I'm more dynamic at it. I'd like to think I'm more confident today. I'd like to think that when I'm on the stage, when I'm in front of the camera, it feels like it's second home. And I didn't get there by myself. I got to that point because I allowed myself to be corrected time and again, and even up to this day. So correction, yeah, very, very valuable.
Which brings me to the fourth, I guess, most practical thing that you can do if you want to improve in your communication is look for a mentor. And this mentor, give him or her the liberty and the opportunity to correct you, listen to you, because it's really hard to listen to yourself and just by listening to yourself, correct yourself. And I truly, really appreciate what, this was Sister Shadi doing this to him. Appreciate that time and many more times after that people like her would take time to listen and improve on certain strengths that are already there. Only a mentor can do that for you. So in communication, in communicating, it's not just about you doing things on your own. It's really looking for others who would add value to yourself as well. Remember, when you begin to go out there in social media, Yes, it's okay to make mistakes because who doesn't? Unless you think that you're allowed to make mistakes here and there, you won't really start anything. So don't be afraid to make mistakes, just do it. But at the same time, think about the impact of the message that you're carrying. Because once it's out there on social media, you don't know the potential of the reach of that. It will reach places where you haven't been, and you won't have the opportunity to explain yourself all the time as compared to having a live audience. So it's very, very important that you think things through, your content. If you have to read it 10 times over again, review your video 10 times over again, have someone check it again. There is really gold in accountability well when it comes to communication.
That's right.
So this is our video for you today. It's all about creating content, knowing how to communicate properly and effectively in social media. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Miss Leigh.
Okay.